everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, we are going to focus on the amazing Eduprotocols. And with us is Sarah Steff, who is the Digital Integration Specialist at Clay High School. A few housekeeping things. Please make sure that if you have any questions or comments that you are putting those in the chat, and we will do our best to answer those and share more with you. So I now will turn it over to Sarah.
Thanks, Tara. So I'm so excited to be talking about Eduprotocols with you. I've got so many things on my Canvas course that I'd like to talk to you about. So I'm only going to briefly highlight some of these things, and I'm going to try to keep it short so that way you have plenty of time in this hour to actually go and explore for yourself and learn some of these. So Eduprotocols, I'm going to click here to the Eduprotocols overview in the course. And basically what Eduprotocols are, if you haven't already heard from some of our other sessions, is it's basically a lesson framework that, you know, it's a structure where you can import any sort of content that you want in that structure. And a lot of these Eduprotocols are different activities, and they hit a lot of those depths of knowledge, the 4 C's of creativity, critical thinking, those sorts of things. So they hit a lot of those things that we want to hit for education, for e-learning, that sort of thing, but they're actually very easy to plan for because the lesson structure is already there. I have a lot of templates that are already created, and all you have to do is pick the topic or the content or whatever. What's great is that the majority of these will work in pretty much any content area. So I'm going to highlight just a few of these. First of all, the Smart Start Eduprotocols here. I'm not going to talk too much about it because there was a great session on it last week that Allison Schlotfield did, and so this is her presentation, and if you want to go back and actually watch her video, feel free to do that. But she's got a lot of great advice and different things. They've got lots of activities for Eduprotocols that are specifically designed for the first week or first 2 weeks of school. So for instance, if you're going to be using a Sketch and Tell Eduprotocol often, the idea behind Smart Starts is to use those frameworks to do something more fun or less content heavy, so very content light, so that way they can learn those structures in a way that's not very intense or aggressive. And then once they've learned the framework, then you can start giving them content and they can focus on the content because they've already learned the lesson structure. So those are the Smart Starts. You can explore them on that page. I'm going to go back to the Eduprotocols overview here. Besides the Smart Starts, I have 15 other Eduprotocols here, which are from the book Eduprotocols by Marlena Hedburn and John Caripo. There should be a second book as well, and I think they're coming out with another one that's specifically on math Eduprotocols. I heard that's coming out, and that sounds exciting. So if you're a math teacher, keep an eye out for that one. All right, so I've got a bunch of these other Eduprotocols. So some of these I'm just going to highlight. Again, I don't have time to go over all 15 of these, so that's something that you can explore on your own, but I just want to highlight a few of these. So let's start with Cyber Sandwich. Cyber Sandwich is a great digital version of the Think, Pair, Share learning method. So for Cyber Sandwich, let me go and open this template in a new tab. Basically, it's a way to get students to do group work or partner work, even if they're not in the same location or even working at the same time. So for a Cyber Sandwich, you would give students a topic, or maybe they read an article or they do some sort of research or something like that. You can give them some topics to research, or even some links or sources just to direct what they're looking at. And then each student on their own has their own slide in this Google slide where they take some notes on whatever they're exploring. So student 1 takes the notes here, student 2 takes notes here. And then they both go to this nice little Venn diagram here, and they have to look at what they found versus what the other student found and sort of help each other fill out this Venn diagram to show what they found that was different and what they found that was similar. So that's the pair part of the Think, Pair, Share here, so they can see what each other is working on. Then they both do a final slide where they sort of summarize in a paragraph what they've learned. And this is great. It's super easy. All you need to do is share this with your students, and then they edit it, and you just tell them what the topic is. So all you would need to change, if you change anything, would probably be here. To give them a topic and maybe some sources. There is a version here for groups of 3 in case you don't have an even number of students or you want to do larger groups of 3. So each student gets their own, and then here's the 3-person version of a Venn diagram. So that's a cyber sandwich, and it can be used for pretty much anything you want it to be. So that's just use the same template, and you just tell them a new topic each time you want to use it. Fast and the Curious. I am a huge fan of the Fast and the Curious model. I was using this lesson model long before I knew Eduprotocols were a thing. So this video kind of explains it, but to give you a short version, basically you give students a quick quiz, and you can use Quizzes, Quizlet, Gimkit, Pear Deck, Kahoot. It doesn't really matter which program you're using. You could even do this in the classroom if we go back to live. But the point is you give them a short, quick quiz on fast facts. So the idea here is this is for learning really fast facts, like maybe just multiplication tables or word definitions, but something really quick. It's not really meant for the in-depth, things that take longer to answer. So things that students should be able to answer really quickly. And you give them a quick quiz on Monday. And then immediately you should, using these programs helps you see immediately which questions students are getting wrong. So based on the results, you can do a little bit, like maybe a 2 to 5 minute, direct instruction reviewing those things that students have gotten wrong. And then you give them that quick quiz again and see if students can improve their score. Then you do the same thing on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc. And you keep repeating every day until the students as a class have reached a 95% pass rate. So, as a class, the class average is 95%. And that tells you everybody in this class has mastered this content. Everybody gets an A in the grade book and you move on. What's nice is if everybody has mastered it by Wednesday, then you're done and you don't have to deal with it. If it takes till Friday, it takes till Friday. But that's the general idea. So you can adapt this to your schedule. And I included this part right here. If you're modifying for e-learning, what's nice is for e-learning, we're doing a lot of asynchronous learning. So if you use something like Quizzes or Quizlet or whatever, here's a great adaptation for e-learning that's really simple and doesn't take a lot of planning, is you create or you find that quiz in one of those programs and you set it to unlimited attempts. So students just attempt it all, as many times as they want. And you can do something like post it on a Monday, take this quiz over and over and over again until you get a 95%. Take a screenshot of your 95% and submit that as your assignment. Do that by Friday. So some students might be able to do that after a couple of attempts and they submit it right away. Some students, it might take them all week until they get to a 95%. But that's just, you post it on Monday. When you get a 95%, submit it, and you've got that to do the whole. You've got the whole week to do that. So that's a nice, easy way to do that with asynchronous learning. The idea here is to avoid grading, so it's not to keep track of each student's every single attempt what grade they got. The point is, don't show me your grade till you've already mastered it, because once you've mastered it, I can give you an A. So we're trying to save you some time on grading. I love that Eduprotocol. How do you manage Fast and the Curious with learners who are not participating? I saw that question, John Raul Buisan. I probably didn't say that right. So you manage it the same way you manage any other assignment that students are not doing. If a student doesn't hand in an assignment, then they don't get credit for it. So you would handle that the same way. Let's look at some other ones. Okay, back here. Let's see, Iron Chef. A lot of people like the Iron Chef. This one is easier to do in a classroom, but it's still a good way to do some group participation when you're not in the classroom as well during e-learning. So for Iron Chef, what you want to do is you really want to get students to explore some sort of theme or topic. So here's our template right here. I'm gonna let that load. And all of these, many of these templates, by the way, have instructions for teachers and or students. So that's kind of nice. So each Iron Chef activity has 4 slides. And so you're doing this with groups of 4 students. So each group gets their own version of this Google Slides. And within that group, each student gets 1 slide. So each student in that group needs to explore their theme, topic, or question, and they have to put some sort of explanation. They can put an image, they can put a video, if they have time, they can make it more elaborate. So they get, so much time to put information on that theme or topic. If you're doing it in this class, try to limit the time so that it's like, okay, you've got 10 minutes, you better get going. And then at some point, you give them a secret ingredient. Tell them, include a YouTube video in your slide, or include a GIF or Google Drawing. Maybe you have to include some vocabulary words. Just something that's a little bit extra, that's a secret ingredient. So that way, to make it a little bit more fun, a little bit more engaging for them to do. So each student in the group gets their own slide, And then at the end, if you're doing this in the classroom, then they would get a chance to present it. And again, you want those presentations to go really, really quickly. So you don't want to spend too much time. If you're doing this from home, then you can still have them working in groups and maybe have an extra slide where they each do like a summary of like kind of a combination of this and the cyber sandwich, where they kind of do a summary of like, what did other people find that I didn't find, or something like that. So you can adapt that for e-learning as necessary. All right, let's go back and look at some more Eduprotocols. Let's see what we've got next. Bookacucha, this is a good one for book reports. So if you're doing book reports, it's a nice template where you can have students, okay, we're going to read this book. Maybe if it's not the whole book, say, okay, this book for these chapters or these page numbers or whatever, let's explore these themes or these topics within the book. So each student gets a copy of this template, and you have to tell them what the theme is or whatever they're exploring and the name of the book and all that stuff. So you can choose what the theme is. And students have all these slides. So all the student has to do is fill in these slides. So they put in the name of the book and the author. I'm on page this, and then they fill in 3 different slides describing what they found in that book based on the themes or the topics that you have them exploring. So they each do a version of this, and then they hand that in. All right, here's a great one for English teachers. So if you're an English teacher, this is called 8 Parts of Speech, but it's not even just for speech. So the original one was an exploration of different parts of speech. So students have to fill these out based on maybe a picture. So maybe you give them a picture, and using that picture, they need to fill this information out. Or maybe you give them an article to read, and then they have to summarize it, but they have to fill in all these boxes around. And then based on that information, you write a paragraph with at least one of each of these. If you want to see some other templates, here's another template that explores main idea, themes, that sort of thing in a story. So here's a protagonist, antagonist. So it's just like a structure where it gets students to fill out some information. And if you use this over and over again, then they get the idea of what they should be looking for while they're reading. If you're looking at source analysis, this is for English or for social studies, let's analyze this primary or secondary source. What's the historical context? What's the point of view? What's a description or a link? What if you're doing DBQ, there's a place for that. So there's all these different versions of this one. And I like these because some of these are great for secondary, but this one's also good just for learning how to write basic sentences and paragraphs to make sense. Okay. I like this internet scavenger hunt. This is a great one because it's still has a template, but I found a really fun looking template. So I'm going to show you this one. And basically it's a way to get students to learn how to research into a topic and present that in an interesting way. It could also be called a web quest. So this is just internet scavenger hunt is just one name for it. But you give students a focus area and focus areas within topics. You can add or take away some focus areas. You can decide what instructions, like what do you want students to include in the scavenger hunt. You can have students list their sources here. I've got some instructions on the side in case you need to. And then there's just blank slides for students to list their notes based on the source, that sort of thing. I also have at the bottom a bunch of extra icons if they want to use icons in their slides to make it look more interesting. They don't have to find those icons. They can find them right in the template. Okay, I want to show at least one more. Learning in the round. So learning in the round is a great lesson structure that allows students to see each other's work digitally. So this is something you can do even if you're not doing a live presentation. So I left this pretty simplistic so that way it can be used in any context. I've talked about this with math teachers a lot, but this can really be used in any class. So you give students a topic and a date, or maybe you ask them a question or something like that. So for math class, it could be, what was the question you struggle with in math, or, solve this problem incorrectly. And in English class, it can be write out a 1-paragraph short story or something like that. And you can have more specific instructions on this instruction slide. And basically, each student gets to assign themselves, or is assigned a slide. I've got enough slides here for 30 students. So each student gets a slide, and it's pretty much blank. And they put in text, pictures, graphics, videos, links, whatever they want. If they want to make it really look cool, they can do that. Whatever they want to do to explain the prompt. But here's where the collaboration comes in. Once they're done with that, we also have instructions where they need to go then and comment on other students' work. So if student 8 wants to comment on student 2's whatever, they can highlight it or something like that. And then they can insert, where's the comment button? There's a comment button somewhere in here. There we go. There's the comment button. So the student can comment, blah, blah, blah. I think that blah, blah, blah. And if you're like me and you realize that a lot of students are not very good at making useful comments, I've included a side here with a comment sentence starter. So you can suggest that your students use these phrases to help them structure their comments to be effective. So I agree or disagree with you. Can you explain? I wonder why. Things like that, to make sure that those comments are useful. I also put in the instructions, comment on 2 other students' work, so that way they can see each other's work, but also make sure that there's no more than 3 comments per slide. Otherwise, whoever finishes first, suddenly everyone's going to comment on their slide, and the people who finished last aren't going to have any comments on their slide. So we want to make sure there's a more even spread of comments in this structure. So that's a big one. I'm a big fan of. Just to briefly mention some of these other ones that we have here. So Frayer model, they talked about that in Smart Starts. It's great for doing vocabulary or for exploring a theme or a topic. Group brainstorming is just, maybe a 1 or 2 slide thing where each person can write their ideas, and that way they can see what other students are writing all in a common slides, or it can be done in a doc as well. Math reps are great because you choose a number of the day, and all you have to change is the number of the day in the middle, and then students have to use that number, or if there's more than one, and use those numbers to do different things. I do have versions of math reps for this is like for elementary or younger students, but I do have a version for secondary as well. So you can do things like find factors, do integer operations, practice with fractions, that sort of thing. So I do have versions for elementary and for high school. Let's see. Digital class book is pretty open-ended one. I've got on this page, I actually have a link to an outside source that has a ton of templates, because there's so many great templates. So based on what sort of class, maybe it's a class notebook, so it's just different notes on different things, or maybe it's like creating a class textbook or creating a class, short story or something like that. So based on whatever you want to make, you can choose a template from one of these outside sources. There's some really great ones. And then you give each student or each group of students a slide or a chapter or something, and then they can create their part of the presentation. And then when it's all done, you just save that as a PDF, and then you can share that with your students. So that's a really fun one. 3-act math, if you're a math teacher, it's a great way to teach math using inquiry and storytelling. Mini reports are a great way to help students if they're not really good with like writing the 5-paragraph essay or doing some research. Instead, it's like you give them a topic, you give them 3 sources, and they just list the facts from sources. So, and that helps them sort of focus what they're looking for. They're not looking for quotes. They're not looking for generalizations. They're saying, okay, this is fact 1, fact 2, fact 3 from this source or for this theme or whatever, and helps them once they found those facts. Then they can, if you want to extend this, write their report or write whatever they need to, but it gives them something to work off of. And there's an example one here, so you can see what that would look like. Okay, and the last one is sketch and tell. And so basically each student gets a slide where they have to describe something. So on one half, they draw an image using Google Drawings, and then on the second half, they describe what their image is, and that could be of pretty much anything. So I know I've briefly mentioned all of these. I know I didn't go into too much detail for these because which ones you want to use is completely up to you. I would never recommend using all of them. That's way too much. But I would suggest that you explore them and find which ones would probably work best for you. So in the Google, or not in the Google, in the Canvas course, the first activity is to explore. So explore some of these and try to find some that you think would be useful. Create a template and then submit that here just so we can see, you know, how are people using some of these Eduprotocols in their classes. And then you can also participate in the discussion board as well and share how you're using them with other teachers. So that's what I have for you in the Canvas course. I want to open it up to some questions, and then I want to give you the rest of the hour to explore on your own time. So are there any questions?
There are no questions in the chat right now, but we'll wait a couple minutes. So I do want to say that people, you know, just again, like Sarah said, Eduprotocols are not just an activity, right? They're a way of delivering content, and they are routines that become part of your class. And like she said, you know, picking just one or two to start with is probably like the best way to start, and not inundating, you know, all of them into your classroom, but they really can work for any content area, for any class, for any level, any student. So I really recommend trying them out. Okay. We have a question that says, what are your suggestions for grading these activities?
So a lot of these, if they involve writing or creating something like designing a slide, my recommendation would be to create a quick rubric that's very general, and just grade them based off the rubric. Again, keep it simplistic, keep it general. Don't make it a very big rubric, because that way you can grade it quickly. And it should be general enough that you use the same rubric no matter what the content is. So that would be my recommendation. Some of these have the grading system put in place. For instance, like I said, Fast and the Curious is designed so you don't grade. All you do is you wait until they get to that 95%, and then everybody gets an A. So that's kind of nice. Some of these might just be lesson activities where maybe you don't want to give them a grade because we're still learning the material. So you just maybe just make sure students participate, and that's maybe part of their grade. But this is all more about the learning process, because these use the collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and I forget what the fourth C is. But they use those to help students use what we know about, you know, how our brain learns and how students think to enhance that learning experience. And so it's the experience and the actual process of learning that's really important. How you grade it is really up to you. So do you want to just do it off of a couple of points? Do you want to do it based off of a rubric? Do you want to do it based off of some participation? We're going to leave that up to you based on your class and what your goal is for these lessons.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to remind ourselves, because, you know, the whole philosophy behind the Eduprotocol is not that they're just doing this kind of right and wrong, but they're creating. And so it does get difficult when students are creating and showing their thought process to grade it. So just like Sarah said, you know, really thinking about the process that students are going through, and not necessarily did they check every box for their final product. There is a question about the math book that is going to be coming out soon. Do we have any idea when it will be available?
I do not know when it will be available. So hopefully soon. We'll find out.
Yes, it has been, from what we've heard from the authors of the book, it is coming very soon. But, you know, I do know that there are people in this district, like if you're interested on how you can use them in your math classroom, Maria Palma-Diaz presented at EdTech in the Bend, and she talked about her use of Eduprotocols in the math classroom. So you can go and check that out at the EdTech in the Bend, the videos that we have available until Labor Day. And she could give you some good ideas on that.
Yeah, I literally just Googled math Eduprotocols and I found this website. It looks like it has a bunch.
Oh, let me share. Hold on, Sarah. Let me share it with everybody. There you go.
Yeah, so I just Googled math Eduprotocols. This was the first thing that came up, and it looks pretty interesting. So if you don't want to wait for the math Eduprotocols book, this is a good place to start.
Most definitely. there's a whole bunch out there. So like even some of the different kind of activities that aren't necessarily a quote unquote edu protocol, but the would you rather, or, like the 3-2-1s, that kind of stuff is all out there. And they have specific templates or activities already made for math.
Yes, and I was specifically a math teacher, a high school math teacher for 6 years. So if you have any questions about math specifically, feel free to email me and ask me how they work, because I have a lot of experience and I'll nerd out on you.
Exactly. So we also have a question about whether or not, again, they have any specific ones for content areas. And what I would say to you is just like Sarah said, sometimes with the math, there seems to be a little bit more of preset ones with math because it is kind of a different content area. But most of these templates you can translate or use with any content area, any classroom, any subject. They are very versatile. Let's see. And someone had asked about some suggestions when you have students who are working on the same document. So collaborative documents.
Yeah. So chances are, I mean, we've had some stories before where like students accidentally, changed someone else's slide or accidentally deleted the entire thing. And that's happened.
Entire thing.
Which, it's that may or may not happen. So preparing students in advance and telling them, hey, this is a serious thing. We don't want to delete other people's work, talking about that. Maybe if they're doing it on purpose, that would definitely be a disciplinary thing. If they're doing it by accident, there are ways, and you can work with your DIS to try to get that information back if they've accidentally deleted something. But one thing that I've heard suggested that I thought was really nice is if you're doing something like learning in the round where every student has a slide, if you assign students their slide, like this person will always be student 3. Well, this person will all be student 8. Then you use that often enough, then students know exactly where to go, and they're not going to mess with other people's slides. So doing something where you can be consistent of like, this is always where you're going to go when we're doing a collaborative document, that tends to help as well. And just keep monitoring it. So as students work, just have it open, maybe make some comments or suggestions as they work. And that way they can see that you're monitoring. Just like in a regular classroom where we use proximity to make sure that students are working and are on task and are not, misbehaving. We want to do the same thing. We can use proximity digitally by making sure students see that we are watching, that we are interacting, that we are engaging them even while they work. And that tends to help as well.
Yeah, and so I will say, if they're working in slides, most of us are used to the editing view, but if you go to the bottom, there's a way that you can change it to grid view, and then you can see all the slides, and you can see which one of your students are on what slide. And if you share this with them in Google Classroom, right, then you have it all right there. All the sharing permissions are open for you. So even if the students are working in small groups, you don't have to worry about asking them for access. If you put it in Google Classroom, you will have access to it. Someone said another question about using these. She says, what do we suggest for grading if we don't use them for formative assessments?
So if you want these to be summative assessments, you can still do that, especially if they're like creating a product to show that they've learned something. And if that's the case and it's a summative assessment, then I would make sure you have a rubric that shows clear expectations, maybe have some check-in points where they have a chance to hear some feedback before getting their final grade. So if they're, looking in the wrong direction or they're doing something wrong, they have a chance to hear from you and to fix that before submitting a final product. So you can definitely do that using rubrics or a grading scheme that works for you. But the majority of these Eduprotocols are really meant to engage students in the learning process and not just to show their learning, but to actually do the learning and interact with it in a very active way. So you can use it for summative, but these are great formative assessments.
They are really great. And, I was not a person who had a ton of grades in her grade book, because for me, when something was graded, it meant that we've gone through this whole process of feedback and redoing and all of that. So, we had a handful of graded assignments, and my students really took to using these Eduprotocols. I mean, they're used to getting points for everything they do, right? So we all have those students who say, well, am I getting graded for it? I'm not going to do it if I'm not getting graded. But when it becomes part of the whole process of your classroom, then that whole philosophy from the student changes, and they're actually okay with doing this kind of work for not getting that 5 points. When I was using Fast and Curious in my classroom, my students knew that, if everybody got it, everybody got a 10. And in the grade book, a 10 out of 10, when I have weighted grades, isn't really skewing somebody into like this A+ range that maybe like isn't really demonstrating that they are going above and beyond expectations. So, it really does work out if you are going to use these as part of your classroom, process and as getting students used to this idea that it's okay that we make mistakes, that it's okay that not everything is graded and not everything is summative.
Yeah, I know my philosophy for feedback versus grading is that feedback is really, really important for those formative assessments. And then grading is what happens for the summative assessments. So and there's a lot of research showing that if you're doing these formative assessments and you're giving them feedback, it actually is more effective without a grade, because then students are actually paying attention to what you say and not just paying attention to the number that you're associating with it. So if there is no grade, then they're actually paying, oh, I need to change this and fix this, but I'm doing really well on that. And then they're focusing on what they're doing and what they're learning, and not focusing on, oh no, I got a 7 out of 10. I need to add this to get an 8 out of 10, or got an 8 out of 10. I'm good. I don't have to change anything, So
my parents are going to get mad at me or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it takes those points and takes them out of it so they can focus on actually, the content that they need to be focusing on.
Yeah. I mean, and even things like a check mark or a star at the top, I mean, that's still a value, still a grade. So, just handing it back, but you have to also get them used to that. So this is the perfect time to start now, right? Just get your kids kind of trained in that whole philosophy of formative is about growth, and we will grade the summative after we've had growth. There doesn't seem to be too many questions.
Which is great, because that means that you guys have extra time to explore this on your own, which was the goal. Originally, this was just going to be a self-paced course, but I just wanted to highlight some of these so you can get an audible explanation and give you a chance to ask some questions. But yeah, use the rest of this time, this hour, to explore some of these and find some that you like. Maybe find ones like, I'm going to use this, next week or even tomorrow if you're really brave. And that's fantastic. Or if you want to explore a few more and maybe I'll do that later, that's fine too.
Yeah, and I just want to say, taking the time. So Sarah did a phenomenal job with this course. Thank you, Sarah, because, having these templates, that's kind of the first hurdle, right? So you can read about these things and see how people do them, but by having all of these templates all in one place where you can just make a copy, and that's your personal template, and then you make a copy every time that you want to use it, I just want to really just take a moment and say thank you, Sarah, for all your hard work, and to thank all the other DISs that have helped contribute to all of this. It really is a great resource, and I hope that all of you use it, because I know Sarah put in a lot of hours and it shows, and I'm just really appreciative of all of that. Mm-hmm. If you guys have any questions, all of these resources will be on the Canvas course. The link to this YouTube will be there as well. And our YouTube videos will not be taken down. We are going to keep them on this channel. So subscribe to the Professional Learning channel, and then you'll be able to come back and, check back through here anytime you want. And if you ever have any questions, I'm just going to put out. Sarah will be happy to answer them. I will be happy to answer them. Your building DIS would be happy to answer them, especially about Eduprotocols, because I know all of us just love them so much.
All right. Thanks, Tara, for having me on.
Thanks for doing all this hard work, and thank you for being an excellent resource in our district, and thank you guys, for all of you teachers, for joining us. I know it's been a really busy time, but we do really appreciate it. So again, please feel free to reach out, go explore those Eduprotocols, and we will see you later.